I will say this, like that was a shining moment, but I feel like a lot of my experience at school was like, don't do that again. Like I would mess with or later when we got computers and we had some of the first like network stuff, I was messing with that. Don't mess with that. That's for the adults. You'll get in trouble if they're wanting everyone to play a math game. And I'm like, well, can we like exit this and see what the operating system looks like? Don't do that. Welcome to the Empowering Choices podcast. My name is Joshua.
I'm Lucas.
And I'm Erik.
Erik and Lucas are licensed professional counselors, and I guess today we're talking about the day I plugged myself into the wall.
I guess we're talking
elementary
about
school.
You're here under your own free will, Josh.
True.
No one forced you to plug yourself into the wall or be here.
That is true.
So this was Josh mentioned this offhand one time, and I wrote it down, and apparently we need to find out more details about what Josh was like in school.
Exactly.
In school, to be clear?
Yes.
This wasn't at home.
No, this was at school.
House?
Yeah. So I was, I had a lot of energy, and I was one of those kids that had a lot of stuff going on. I wanted to be very busy, and I found most of the school stuff to be boring.
Because you got good grades, if I recall correctly.
Yeah,
right?
I didn't do terrible. Yeah.
So that's like a different dynamic of a kid who doesn't care and is failing and whatever.
Right.
You're like, no, you were smart and then bored.
Yeah, I just got tired of waiting to do something else. And so basically this was in the third grade, and
you're like 8.
Yeah, and our teacher had asked us to bring like some type of thing that you made or that you really love that you could show off. And so
it was like show and tell.
Kind of like show and tell.
Yeah,
and so it was going to be my turn that day. And one of the things that I would make all these electronics projects at home. And so like Radio Shack was my favorite place to go as a kid.
For those of you who don't know, you could have bought electronics there before they went bankrupt?
Yeah, before they went bankrupt. I think about 10 years before that, they almost were just like a cell phone store. But back in the day, you could actually go in there.
30 years ago.
Right, you could actually go in
wires
there.
and transistors and circuit boards.
Cool stuff. Yeah, and so I would tinker with all that and play with all that. And we lived in Arkansas, and in Arkansas, you have a lot of severe weather, and you have like storms, and you have all these issues. So one of the things that I did, my parents took me on a tour of the National Weather Service in Memphis, Tennessee, when I was probably about 7. And I had gone through there and saw all the computers and all the stuff, and it was, that was all in my mind. And so one of the things that I thought I would make would be this like safety warning belt where you could have it during a storm, and it had a light on it for like if there was a tornado watch, a buzzer that would go off if there was a warning. And sort of the idea was that I could sort of be like the center. It was almost like I was the computer, right? So if there's a problem, I could flip the switch. So you wear this
belt.
Yes.
Like Batman.
Yes.
But except instead of a batarang, it has tornado warning lights.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
You're the first alert weather.
Exactly.
Belt.
Like in person.
Jimmy Neutron. In grade school.
Where would it have gathered this information from to make the light on the belt turn on?
Well,
barometric atmosphere.
I had previously made a rain detector with one of my electronics kits, and so I thought that I could run that.
Okay, wait a second. A rain detector?
Yes, it basically detects when there's liquid, it would hit it, and so, but you would have to run that outside and hook it to wires. So that was like in my mind in progress. And then the other thing was I was also really into radio, so I had these scanners that I could monitor the storm chasers, and then I would know if they had spotted something or whatever. So basically the idea was this belt was typically battery powered because I wanted it to be mobile, and I could walk around and go wherever I wanted, and I would have this belt, and I could, flip the switch. Well, that morning we're getting ready to go, and I cannot find my battery. And my mom's like, we gotta go. And I'm like, but I have to show my weather belt today. And all I could do was I was like, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do. I need 12 volts. I need something with 12 volts. And I thought, my model train has a 12-volt transformer for its controls. And so I ran in my bedroom, I yanked it out of the wall, unhooked it, and took it. And then on the way to school, I wired the model train controller into the belt. But then the model train controller plugs into the wall.
And so it's like it plugged into the wall and then converted the volts to
12 volts, yes.
Yeah.
And so, but to my teacher, I had all that concealed because I had the belt on. I had the train controller in my pocket. And so she's like, okay, it's time for you to show us your thing. And I just walk up with a wire dangling out of me and I plug it into the wall. And she's like, whoa, wait, what's up? I'm like, no, it's safe. And we're converting 120 to 12. It's fine. It's not going to be a big deal.
I like how it ate. Like, because I'm imagining that there are some people in the audience, me at least halfway included, that have no idea what you just said. And they're with your teacher going, the heck is the 8-year-old doing?
Should not be plugging himself into the wall. But see, I knew it was safe. I knew that I had the right equipment in there. But yeah, and I think she like told me like I got in trouble, like never do something like that again. Like never plug.
Because he gave her a heart attack.
Yeah, never plug yourself into the wall. But you know, I will say this, like that was a shining moment, but I feel like a lot of my experience at school was like, don't do that again. Like I would mess with like, or later when we got computers and we had some of the first like network stuff, I was messing with that. Don't mess with that. That's for the adults. You'll get in trouble if you know, they're wanting everyone to play a math game. And I'm like, well, can we like exit this and see what the operating system looks like? Like, don't do that. So that was, you know, some, and like we talked about on a previous podcast, some teachers would let me like do projects and stuff, but then others were like, don't do that again, ever.
Absolutely. It has to be the way it's supposed to be.
Right.
I mean, you're talking about that, and I'm remembering in a science class in middle school, and we're doing review for the test.
Yeah.
It is so boring. I mean, it's
Because you were already prepared for the test?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we
so
knew
again, like smart bored student.
just smart and bored. So we thought, me and my couple of buddies in the back, we thought that we're in science class, we're bored out of our gourds, we know this stuff. Let's run a science experiment. and anytime any thought started with that, it always ended up in the principal's office.
And frequently involved flammable objects?
And this would be one of those.
One of.
And so we thought, you know, let's find out, because we all knew how to do different paper airplanes. And so let's do a science experiment while the teacher's going over test questions. And we created a grid. We created a grid and everything to keep our data on. And we want to see how far our different styles of paper airplanes can fly out the window while on fire.
Okay, that last part might be the kicker.
Right. And it was. And so we have our grid, we have the different names for the different styles of the folded airplanes, and you know, we get it all ready to go, and then, you know, we'd use Frank's lighter and we'd light it on fire at the end, and then we'd send it out the window, and we're approximating how many feet it flies in the air before it goes straight down.
Because there's nothing outside a school window that could possibly also be flammable.
Well, what was outside the school window was a lot of green grass. And I mean, it was just...
So like I said.
Yeah, there was nothing out there that was going to catch on fire.
Because grass isn't flammable.
Well, green grass is pretty not flammable, that style. But at the same time, you're a kid. That's not a part of the experiment. Okay, now... What
unforeseen variable? We're not calculating for this.
Well, the real unforeseen variable is that the one time in the year that the janitor decided to do weeding outside that window is when flaming airplanes he stepped back and he was like trying to put things out on him. And, you know, then we're in trouble.
We're in trouble. How'd that happen?
Right. But we're really, you know, not trying to be malicious. And we were, you know, there was some fascinating things we were finding out about paper airplanes and aerodynamics and, you know, the wind and everything, and flame included. Wow. I know, right?
Okay.
So it's really kind of the question of like, this is a parenting podcast, at least ostensibly. Like what's a good parental, or I suppose even like teacher, right? Like response to the smart bored kid who's going to cause trouble unless all of that energy is like harnessed, right?
Yeah, you know, because the whole part about going to cause trouble, because what are we going to do? We're going to seek out something to try and combat the boredom.
Oh,
right.
You know,
and flaming airplanes fit that bill.
Flaming airplanes worked great. I mean, Rodney just fell asleep in class. That's how he handled it. Rodney was.
Well, that's a different coping skill.
It's a different, yeah. I mean, he was in my AP history class that I didn't even want to be in, and he was in the AP history class, would sleep every single day. And the teacher was like, fine, well, then 1/3 of her class was asleep. So she woke everybody up, and Rodney was snoring. So she woke him up and asked him the toughest question on the review, and he half groggily answered it in depth and then asked if he could go back to sleep.
So, like, smart student, bored.
Yep.
And he's, I don't know, is he causing trouble? I mean, kind of, maybe, not really.
Not really. She allowed him to go back to sleep, but he was the only one who could sleep in class as long as he could keep up his grades.
And apparently he did.
Oh, yeah. Rodney was a genius.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, so you have a genius, and you are... the expectations for them are not high enough, so they, they have a variety of responses.
Right. And so how do you handle, kids when they're not fitting into the norm?
Ooh, that's probably an even better, question.
Right.
That's more than one podcast.
I know for myself, I would have curtailed some of those things a lot better had my dad gotten into my world and wanted to do things with me that I enjoyed. And by this time he was pretty much gone. But in the grade school years, if he'd have done that, it would have cut down on this incredibly, because he would say, listen, these are great things. Come home. We'll do them. So bring your friends over. We'll do them.
So you might have been able to be in class and be like, I shouldn't throw flaming paper airplanes out the window because I'll be able to go home and do something crazy with Dad that everyone will be okay with, and I'll not get into as much trouble as if I throw flaming airplanes out the window.
Probably at that time, what my friends would have said is, oh, this is a great idea. Call your dad on lunch and see if we can do it this afternoon at your house. And if he was involved in it, he'd have been fine with it. We'd have probably actually had, some really good data things to look at. And because he himself was a scientist, and gridded and drew and blueprinted everything, so it really would have been, a much better experience of being in school, which is hard because Mr. Paul was the science teacher who was a genius himself. But at the same time, he's all hemmed in by what his restrictions are for how he has to teach.
Right.
And the mainstream of everyone. Lots of people are paying attention in there. I get it.
So he was hitting 80% of the students in the class.
Yeah. But it's the 20% that you've got to work with because they're either going to work with you or against you, not out of being malicious, just out of being unchallenged or bored.
Yeah. And it seems like that's where either if you're a teacher or you're a parent, you just have to maybe put a little extra thought into what can we do to make this a better situation. So like one of the other things I got in trouble with because I really loved electronics was I think we're now on like the 4th grade. And I may have told this story before, but basically the teacher pulled me aside and said, we're going to be doing in science an electronics chapter. This is going to be very boring for you because it's all basic level stuff that I know that you already
know. Doing with your train set at home.
So it's like, I need you to be quiet, to just sit there, to do what you're told, and just endure the boredom. And so the first thing that she did. Yeah, so the first thing that she did.
I mean, it's a half of a good idea. She was at least giving you a warning.
If only I could, but I can't.
Yeah, it was a half of a good idea.
The first thing that she did is she had everybody stand in a circle in the room and hold hands. And she's going to demonstrate how electrons pass. And so when the electron starts down there and it touches you squeeze your neighbor's hand so it goes. And so she needs everybody to be very quiet, don't say anything. And when it gets to the end, the person who's the light bulb will say, all right, I'm there. Yeah. So I'm somewhere in the middle of that, and I'm in my mind, I'm already resonating on what she was saying. Okay, be quiet, don't do anything. And I'm just like, this is dumb. This is going to be boring. This is whatever. So as soon as my hand gets squeezed, I'm laying there like that, and I go, and I like fall out on the floor. And then I got to go sit in the hallway for the rest of,
the electron experience.
Yeah, for the rest of the experience. Now everyone laughed. I got attention from it. It was fun. It wasn't as dumb as everything, and it didn't matter to me that I was in the hall, because in the hall I was looking there. We had a brand new school, and it had like the first time I'd ever seen a motion detector for a security alarm. So I was out there messing around, seeing like how slow or how fast you could go before the red light would come on.
You won.
Yeah. So
as far as you were concerned, this was a victory. This was success.
And you're doing further experiments.
Exactly. Yeah. But it seems to me like it would have been so much better if she said, hey, I know you already know some of this stuff. Would you want to put together something and show us? Like, that would have totally changed it for me.
I had a
and that
client
happens
who
a
said
lot like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I had a client who was like, we're doing a series on whatever it was, like astrophysics or something.
Yeah.
Basic stuff. And the student was like, I know you know this. Can you put a presentation together on like that you can teach the class? But like, I want you to work on this while everyone else is learning the stuff you already know.
Right.
And at the end of the segment, I want you to present your thing on the moon or whatever it was.
Yeah. No, that's one way that is a very old school, brilliant way of being able to pull that you or that me into that piece, because you're already past that. And so you're going to find some way. I was in an English class in middle school, and we're doing poetry, and you're supposed to memorize your poem. And I love Shel Silverstein. Silverstein. Thank you. I just blew that name. And I can't remember the name of the poem at the moment, but at the end of it, because it's a guy who goes on all this adventure and all these travels, and he almost gets killed, and he almost gets killed, and he almost gets killed, and he almost gets killed. And then it gets to the end, and he goes, and then you know what? I died. And so when I said I died, I fell off the stool.
Okay.
Bam. Onto the floor as a part of the presentation, And I mean, half the class was up there going, oh my gosh, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, that was just a part of it. And then it was, don't ever do that again,
Yeah.
But I mean, and at the same time, it's a dramatic effect piece.
Right.
If I run it by the teacher will go, hey, that's a great idea, but not in my classroom.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need the liability.
Right. And so I'm not going to run it through the teacher.
Right. You know enough to be
you're not going to allow this, but I'm going to do that. And even the teacher was like, man, that was a great dramatic effect. What if you'd have broke your neck? Yeah. You know. And I'm like, well, yeah, my parents wouldn't have sued you. They'd have gone, oh, okay, well, it was a fun time having him. We knew that was going to happen sometime, and
yet you made it to adulthood somehow.
I did, and I had many dramatic effects all along the way. And that's the thing, is that when you have kids that are extremely creative, extremely, they know they're highly intelligent. These are their gifts. Being able to create the enriched environment as much as you can at home. One of my buddies, his parents, he loved electronics too. He loved the idea of understanding what makes it tick.
Yeah.
And when his dad got upset because he kept taking apart the alarm clocks. And so he just went and got him a bunch of alarm clocks and things from like Goodwill. And he's like, this is what you can take apart.
These ones are okay. The one in my bedroom, leave alone.
This will not get you grounded. You know, and so they had a heyday. Toasters, alarm clocks, microwaves, they'd take it apart, they'd try to put it back together. And, as an adult, he said, I learned so much by pulling those things apart and being allowed to do that. And it didn't matter. And you could figure out how to do that. You're not going to get that in school.
Right.
And so having, I tell parents with autism, when you find your child's focused interest, pump it, feed it, help it to be there. It can be also your greatest source of helping them to do things they don't want to do. One person I did an assessment for, and they're like, yeah, we can't get him to do anything else that isn't his interest. And school is really hard. Homework, he doesn't want to do it. I'm like, he has 5 airplanes sitting there with him that he had made out of paper. And we're not talking like paper airplanes. We're talking, he constructed the model from paper of all these different fighters and things. So it's really easy to know his interest.
Right. It's planes.
Right.
Yeah, right. It's right there. And I'm like, do you like to read books about planes? And his dad's like, oh, he reads everything about planes.
Okay, so he reads. That's
So he's read every book about planes? Well, no, I mean, we don't own every book about planes, but you could get some more. And he's like, where are you going with this? Do your homework and you get this book. You see, and it's like,
or a plane model, or if you do well at the end of the year, we'll take you to the Aeronautics and Space Museum.
And a lot of times, like with him, it's got to be closer in there.
That's,
and then so you can layer it.
Is hard,
yeah. And so it's like, that's your currency to help him get past the things that you can't get him past because they're dumb to do. Why would I do that? That's a part of his neurology. But if he has a plane book he wants to get to, now he has a reason to do that. And just, learn while he's doing that, not realizing that that's what he's doing.
Are you sure you didn't want to talk about token economies?
No. I do, but I want to do it in a much more presented way.
Sure, right. But that's like a slice of it, right?
It's a slice of it.
Yeah.
It's a slice of it.
Because you're not paying the kid money. You're like, do your homework and you get a plane book.
Right. Yeah. Right. It's preferred, non-preferred type piece.
Yeah. And I think this is what my brain does, is it wants to boil down stuff into like bite-sized pieces. It sounds like the thing that we're saying is like, if you've got a kid who's having a hard time, you need to approach and engage, and you need to figure out how to harness that ability by moving towards it, right? Rather than telling, because like your teachers were like, stop, don't do that, put it away, put it on the shelf. No, that didn't work. Right. The only approach that was successful was, how can we harness this thing that you have, whether it's electronics or airplanes or whatever, and then we make that work for us. And, we come back to some of our fundamental principles of know your kid, right? I was like, oh, he's into airplanes. Okay, he's into electronics. Okay, how do I use that as fuel to do the other things?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. In grade school, through a couple of the years, I got connected with a couple of friends, and they were pretty good artists, and I was an artist, and we were drawing a comic book. And any time that we had finished our work, rather than sit there and be bored, we would draw either individually, or we'd get to be together and we'd draw on the comic book. We'd create the characters, we'd create the storylines. Recess, lunches, anytime we had free time, we'd come, put things together and compile it. It was very helpful in, handling that boredom.
And sometimes, that's a fairly like non-destructive like activity, as opposed to if you were like, we want to throw a football or light paper airplane. Those don't fit in the classroom very well.
No.
Like drawing a comic does.
Yes.
So okay, we can figure out how to make that work more easily than flaming airplanes.
Well, the same kid, Erik, that I had started drawing the comic book with in middle school, he was in my home ec class, and I got into there a little bit late. And we got all of the things done that we needed to do. And it was me, and it was Erik, and it was Matt. And we were all finished with the things, and we were all bored out of our gourd. And Erik said, I'm going to see if I can bring in a new game that just came out. And if we're quiet, if we can come back here and we can just learn the game. And I'm like, anything,
please.
I'm thinking Jacks, Tiddlywinks, anything. I'll take hopscotch in some weird way. I don't know. I don't care.
Right. You have an idea. Go for it.
He talked to the teacher. The teacher was like, yeah, you guys are all done with your stuff. Fine.
So this teacher was kind of like, yeah.
Yep. There's only a couple weeks left. I think we had I guess we had 4 weeks left.
Oh, you'd finished the whole term.
The whole thing. Other kids were struggling, and they were doing their stuff. The teacher was helping them. And so the next day, Erik walks in with the first ever Dungeons and Dragons book.
You got my attention.
Right? And I'm like, it has a dragon on it, and it has someone that looks like Conan the Barbarian on it. I'm in.
I'm in. I don't know what this is, but I'm in.
And we did. We started learning this game back there, and we're playing it, and we're being quiet, and we're doing the different things, and we're rolling the dice, and all of a sudden other kids would come around and go,
what you doing?
Yeah, right? Everybody's got to be nosy. And they're like, why do they get to play Dungeons and Dragons and we can't play? And we're like, we finished.
Right, this is an easy answer.
Yeah, and they're like, well, I don't want to do anymore. No, you have to finish. I'm only saying this facetiously. The smart kids finished. And that's only facetiously, because it's not that at all. But we were encouraging guys, hey, finish your things. Some of us actually went to help them finish their things. Well, Then you had about a third of the class back there, and they were in intermittent, different areas. And then the teacher's like, nope, you can't play anymore.
It was being too disruptive.
It was
I would imagine
too
was the
disruptive to the rest of the class. And now we're sitting there, and the teacher's like, well, here, I'll give you extra things to do. And I'm like, why do we get punished for finishing everything ahead of time? And now I'm not happy.
Right.
And so I went home, and I laid out my case, and I told my mom the whole way, this is what's happening. This is what the teacher was okay with. This is what we're doing. We're really doing well at not being disruptive.
We've met the expectations.
We've done it. And so my mom actually came into the class to talk to the teacher, and she's like, I want to know why my child has extra things. And so she explained it, and my mom was very adamant. Did you okay this when they brought the book to you? And she said, yes, I did. Well, then why are you doing this? Because the other class, it's just drawn everybody. She's like, well, then why don't you deal with them? She's like, it seems like if people are finishing, then they go over to the game that my son and his friends are playing. That gives you more time to help the other students finish. She was just very matter of fact. And the lady finally said, okay, fine. They can play their game as long as they're not disruptive. And I'm like, I didn't even care at that point about playing the game because we were playing it on the weekends.
Oh,
so it wasn't about bringing that in. It's like, don't give me extra stuff. That's not fair because we finished.
Well, it feels like there's a problem of like the teacher was trying to make the problem go away by dealing with the potentially the most compliant part of the situation. I don't know if that would necessarily be you, but like they were calculating that. And like as you described your mom approaching it, it's like, well, why aren't you dealing with the problem? Right? It's like these kids over here finished early. They're being fine. And the kids who haven't gotten their work done are the ones not following the expectations, but we're punishing the kids who are doing fine. And that seems a little backwards.
Yeah, exactly. And the same thing in the pottery class. It was like, why am I the problem? Because I want to do something different that I'm ready for, and the teacher is like, no, you have to do a saucer, a cup, or an ashtray. And it's like, well, what happens when you finish all that? Well, then we'll start you back on a saucer.
On a saucer, a cup, or an ashtray.
It's like, this doesn't make sense, guys. Why can't I just start with Yoda?
Yeah.
Maybe I could figure out how to put a cup in his hand and a saucer, in front of him, and then a cigarette in the other hand.
A cigarette in the other hand.
Because and an ashtray, because that's what you're having us make.
Yeah.
I'll make all three of them all at once and give it big pointy ears.
Right. And that's, I get how hard it is as a teacher to 100%. Be able to work with the students in the classroom. I've been in the classroom. I totally get it. I get how hard it was for teachers to work with me. But at the same time, those teachers who really thought out of the box didn't have that much problem. I mean, that pottery teacher, he didn't ever want to be doing a saucer, a cup, and an ashtray. And when he's allowing me to do Yoda and other people to do other things, which they did quite well at, then he puts them in the display case. Now he has the principal going, what's up? That was not in the lesson plan, that I approved, but those are good. What we need to talk. And it just now blew the whole thing out of the water. Now that teacher could actually teach the way he was trained to be able to, at his skill level, be able to do. And so it's like we get seen as these problems in the classrooms, and it's not about us being a problem. It's not about the system being a problem. It's about we get in ruts.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here's a new title for the podcast. It's not a bug. It's a feature.
There you go. So if you got someone with some extra energy or squirreling around more, think about it and find something that they can do. And I think we talked about this previously, but even for me, sometimes that was as simple as just sweeping or cleaning or doing something. It doesn't
You're
even
bored
always,
out of your mind. What else can we have you do?
Yeah, it
Can you
doesn't
clean
even
the
always
windows?
have to be like go build a spaceship. It can just be here's some things you can do other than the whole sit down, don't say a word, and if you do, you're in trouble. Just burn the energy off.
In my 6th grade class with Mr. Hislop, he figured out I was a different individual. And he moved my desk next to his, and he said towards the back of the classroom, and he said, listen, I'm not doing this for punishment. Let's do it for a week or two and see if it helps keep you a little more focused. And by the way, I see you're reading Hardy Boys. I love that series. You know, you can talk to me about it anytime. I'd love to, you know, talk about it because I've read all those books. And he did, I'll call them hyssop dollars, you know, and so.
You mean a token economy?
It was a token economy.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And so anytime I don't have work to do, I'm in my Hardy Boys book because he's like, you can keep that there. You can read that anytime. You can do that with any book. I'm like, I love to read, and you're actually going to let me? And he goes, and I'm just going to slide you these hyssop dollars like candy, you know? And he did. He goes, you're so close to my desk. I mean, basically, I sneeze, and they go over there, and they're yours, you know? And I'm like, I kind of like this dude, you know? And so that changed. And he goes, and if you want to do different things, to me.
Yeah.
I'm open to things.
Mm-hmm. That sounds like a good ending note.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me. I'm
Talk
open
to
to
me.
things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And if you like some of these ideas and some of these things, we'd love to hear things that you've done to keep your kids or others busy. Definitely leave that in the comments, and we'd love to interact with you. And while you're doing that, make sure to go to our website at empoweringchoices.community. Check out all of the things there. Sign up for our courses and download our app. You can search Empowering Choices Parenting in any app store and find that app. And we will see you on the next episode.
Talk to us. We're open to things, but not that thing.